This is Cluck, a space combat game I've been working on in Unity for most of 2 months now. I started by establishing basic functionality, but now I'm deep into an improvement phase, fleshing out game mechanics, starting to work out visual quality, and improving flight control systems. I put up a video of this a few weeks ago, back when it was in a much earlier phase of development. A lot has changed since then. I made a lot of visual improvements and added many features, but the biggest change is that I've implemented VR. I was going to wait until the project was further along, but I needed to resolve scale issues now rather than later. To do that, I needed to verify how big the cockpit would have to be, which meant that I had to bring in VR earlier than I planned to. I thoroughly enjoy working with VR, but getting it working smoothly in this kind of environment was more difficult than usual. There's 2 cameras running, so I can use separate render pipelines for different visual effects. There's an inside camera that only sees the cockpit, and an outside camera that can see everything but the cockpit with its own effects chain. This also helps keep outside objects and effects from accidentally clipping into the cockpit. I tried out a lot of methods of controlling the joystick. I eventually settled on control by adjusting hand angle relative to initial grip. It proved more comfortable and natural than moving my hand in an arc. I also gave it a working trigger lever. Twisting the stick rolls the ship. I'm still deciding if I like this method. I may make the thumbstick an alternative and let users turn twisting off. One thing I knew early on was that I wanted a long linear throw for the throttle. That's a purely personal choice, a bit of dramatic flair. Your hands lock onto the throttle bar when you grab and move it. I also tried out a motorcycle-style twist grip, but I preferred this linear version. I gave it a sequential color-coded light bar to show the current throttle level. You engage boost by pulling the throttle's trigger. I gave that its own light bar too to show its charge level. It depletes as you use it and slowly recharges. Blue means available, red means it's too low to activate. I needed a pressable button to activate the jump drive. Jumps are meant for progression gating between missions, but for now you can jump anywhere, anytime. I haven't added hands yet because what I have in mind will take some work. They won't be human hands, I'll leave it at that. For now I use these simple spheres as a visible placeholder. The white area provides physical force for pushing things, and the transparent shell shows its grabbing range. All the controls are movable to suit user comfort, and their new locations are saved in a local file. There's a global setting that lets you reposition the controls. When it's on, each control has a glowing green grab handle that lets you move them around. This includes a pilot's seat in the cockpit. When I made the switch to VR, the target reticle and other HUD elements needed to move to compensate for camera movements. I also added a recentering feature if you hold both stick buttons down. It does it by reorienting the VR rig to whatever direction the user is facing. And no, I'm not happy with my VR frame rates right now. I'm working on that. I also did some work on the cockpit itself. It's still not a final design, but for now I've added a little more detail to the model. I gave it a basic texture instead of the flat gray it had before. I fixed the radar's projection math, though it's still a bit sticky at deflections of 90 degrees. I added a light bar to show the ship's health, and I threw in a text display on the HUD for important messages. I also added monitors that display plotted graphics, video, and scrolling text, along with a static effect. These are just test monitors, but they'll be important once I start adding story elements, and I promise that story is very, very weird. Now that VR is mostly out of the way, I can move on to the fun parts. Improved terrain, more realistic planets and moons, real models and textures, and better combat AI. And explosions. Lots of explosions. Also a mission system, so there's more to do than fly around shooting at random aliens.